Alrighty, welcome to another episode of the Oliver Build series. Today we're going to put these in the engine bay. In between videos, I painted the frame with the same Tractor Supply paint, but these bump stop cans and risers here, they've always kind of bugged me from stock. So I'm going to make my own riser here with a nice Daystar bump stop. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to chop it off right at the weld up here and make a plate with a riser that bolts on more like a McPherson style strut. And that way I can interchange it, I can pull it out and put an air bump in there if I want to eventually. So we're going to get these chopped out and then start making some new ones. So I'm in my father's barn right now. Hopefully you can hear me with the heat running. We're going to go ahead and put together these bump stops that I've thought up. I cut these apart on the bandsaw at work just because it's quicker than the angle grinder, and I had some free time on lunch. So I've got these countersunk head bolts. I'm going to throw these through and weld these on, turn them into studs, and then we're going to put the risers on, weld those. Bump stops should be here Friday or tomorrow, and we'll get those put on and then painted on the Jeep. Alright, so just before we drop the engine back in, I'm hoping that this is the last time it goes back in, but I'm not 100% sure, so before we do that, we're going to throw the adapter plate on. It's recommended that you fill these two detent ball holes with just a big glob of RTV before you put the adapter plate back on. And then when it comes to the adapter plate, Joe at Doomsday Diesel has done a great job with his instructions, so I'm not going to go too in depth with it, just give his instructions a good read. So let's get with it. Alright, so we're going to take a day off and do something a little bit more aesthetic. So I made a cardboard template here for a wiring cover, considering I'm going to just cover up some of it. I don't want to hack out too much and potentially lose my CAN bus system. So I've got a big chunk of scrap aluminum behind me over here, so we're going to lay this out on that and start cutting it out. I'm going to pull the 7.5mm diesel mechan pump off, and I'm going to be replacing it with the stock pump with an Alda removed. And the reason I'm going to be doing that is so that I don't have to run the intercooler for my turbo setup, which means I don't have to cut holes in the hood. So we're going to see how well this turbo setup performs, and then if it's undesirable or I want some more power, then we'll move up to the 7.5mm pump again, put an intercooler on it, maybe cut holes in the hood, maybe put a front mount on it. But that's kind of where we're at with the build series right now. So we're going to go ahead, pull the old pump off. I cleaned, degreased, and I'm painting the stock injection pump black just because I have it off. So since I'm going to run the stock pump instead of the diesel mechan 7.5mm pump, I'm going to go ahead and retime the engine at 26 degrees before top dead center. So I just got the throttle linkage assembly all put back together. I took the Jeep bracket and welded it to a nice big piece of plate with one of the Mercedes pivot points on it, so that I'm using the Mercedes ball and socket, and then put a Jeep ball here on the end of that linkage, so everything moves nice and smooth, gives me full range of throttle throw, so that's good. Alright, so this is my lower radiator hose. I cannot remember the part number for this hose, but I will go to my parts store and try to find it. It may or may not end up in the video. This is just an elbow off of the stock TJ lower radiator hose, and then this gets it down and around the fan pretty well. You may have to put some sort of mount in the center just to keep it from bouncing around into stuff. So this is going to be my crossover heater core hose. It's Gates part number 19235, and the plan with this is to chop a few inches out of it here and put this insert, this little union, and that'll just straighten it out and shorten it up, because the plan is to come down across this pinch weld and up to the outlet, so that everything is below the radiator. Hopefully we don't have any air bubbles, because the original plan was to come up and across the top and down, and I think we're gonna get air bubble issues with that, so we're gonna try this. So here's what I've got sorted for my crossover heater core hose. It's that Gates 19235 hose, and I've got it running down with the first bend, and then the second bend matches up nicely with how the firewall contours. And right where it starts to do that, there's a HVAC unit stud. So I've got one of these clamps clamping it on the firewall. And then if we go to the other side, I've just got it running around the back of the engine, and then I use that 5/8 union to shorten it up a little bit so that this bend matches up nicely with the outlet on the engine. So I think that should work a lot better than having it run up and across the top here. Alright, so when it comes to the catch can, I actually liked the bends that were in this 19235 Gates hose. So I'm going to use this hose again, coming off of my breather port on the valve cover, and I'm actually going to use my catch can right here in front of where my old AC lines would have been. So that means that these AC lines are going to get cut back. Unfortunately, I'm kind of accepted the fact that Oliver's never going to have AC. If he does have AC, it'll probably be some sort of aftermarket unit that's universal. So we're going to go ahead, chop these back. I may take a hammer and hit them into the firewall a little bit so they're bent back, and then we're going to build a mount, probably using this HVAC stud and a nutsert to hold the catch can right about there. So all the stuff for my 3-inch straight pipe stainless exhaust will be here Sunday, which is 2 days from now. So in between that time, I'm gonna bite the bullet, strip the back end down, and repaint the frame all the way back. It'll be good to do anyways, so let's get going.